Powerlifting is one of the fastest growing sports right now. In this video, I'll show you essentials for beginners along with some buy for life items to give you more options as well. And here's the kicker. There's one piece of equipment that almost every single beginner gets wrong. And I'll tell you exactly what it is before the end of this video. So make sure you stick around so you avoid the mistakes that I made when I first bought these items. Without further ado, let's get right into it. As you probably know, powerlifting is scored by your total on the squat, bench, and deadlift, aka the SBD. And believe it or not, there's quite a few items that actually add more kilos to your overall lifts, and they can be reused throughout all three lifts. So let's start out with the obvious. Knee sleeves. These are probably the most iconic items in the powerlifting community and sport. And they are definitely a must-have. Why? Simple. Knee sleeves will keep your knee warm, offer you additional support and elasticity, and depending on the stiffness, it can actually even add up to additional 50 pounds to your squat. So the question remains, which one should you buy? Sure, you could grab a cheaper on Amazon, and I'll put it on the screen right now. However, if it were me, I highly recommend you investing in one of these instead. So first off, it's the Mark Bell Slingshot knee sleeve. These are competition approved, and they cost at around, I think, $105 currently. They were a really good solid startup knee sleeves, and they offer a wide range of colors, which is awesome. They have a pretty competitive price point, but there's a couple of reasons why I wouldn't buy them. Over time, they do lose stiffness, which is something that you don't want. So it's not really a great buy for life item. And because it loses tightness and stiffness, that means there's gonna be less pounds lifted, and that's not something that you want. So for competition, you would obviously want something a little bit stiffer than these. So this would be great for hobby lifters, but definitely not for the competition lifters. Next, we got the SBD knee sleeves, and these are starting at $129. Very popular. SBD is like the king brand for powerlifting. I might get a hot take for that one, but in my opinion, they're like the king brand. Everyone knows them. This is my current and favorite pair. I love the color of these. I actually own these and use them probably longer than the Mark Bell Slingshot knee sleeves. And honestly, not only are they stiffer than them, but they also last longer as well. Like literally, they look like day one when I first bought them. So if you want long lasting and you want to buy something for your life, I highly recommend buying the SBD knee sleeves, as they are not only IPF approved, but they last a long time, and they're just the best overall knee sleeves you could possibly buy right now. Now lastly, I don't own these because I'm just not that serious at the moment, but you can get the Inzer Ergo Pro knee sleeve. Yeah, that's a mouthful, and they are the stiffest knee sleeves currently right now for the IPF competition approved knee sleeves. They might get banned soon, but regardless, they give incredible bounce on the hold. They're extremely stiff, which means it's gonna add more weight to your squat. However, from people in my gym who have been using them, they have told me that it's not as durable and they don't last as long, and they're not very well built. But hey, if you want to add pounds to your lifts, I think you know which one to buy. The Ergo ones. But knee sleeves only cover your squat. But what about something that helps across all lifts? Let's move on. Wrist wraps. They give your wrists extra support, reduce strain, and can even add a little bit of weight to your deadlifts. So starting off with the cheapest option, you can easily buy the Iron Bull wraps, and I believe they start around $20. They are cheap Amazon wraps, but honestly, they give you so much value. I used these for 6 months when I first started, and they were absolutely incredible. I highly recommend them. They're cheap, but obviously they're not competition approved, so that's the only reason I wouldn't buy them. Now, of course, these are the SBD wrist wraps. These actually start at $68, which isn't cheap for a pair of wrist wraps. However, these are competition approved. They are also stiffer, and they are long lasting. Like, I've owned these literally since day one when I first started my competition. And you know, if you're a serious powerlifter and you want to compete and you really want to fit the look, I'd say this is a great option to go for. Gangsta wraps. Honestly, I personally wouldn't recommend these. They look cool and the name is super fun, but they just aren't as stiff as the SBD ones. Now these do come in two different sizes. You have the standard size, and then you also have the extra long one. Now with the standard size, you're obviously not going to get the same stiffness as the SBD ones. The SBD ones are just night and day better and stiffer. However, if you do get the longer ones, you can actually wrap them a specific way, and you can make it more customizable so you get more support for your wrist, for your personal benching or deadlifting or squatting. Now for the price, these start at $63, and if you're spending $63, in my opinion, I would recommend just getting the $68 SBD wraps instead. They're just, again, night and day better. that's what I would go for. Wraps are helpful, but do you remember that one piece of gear that I said most beginners get wrong? Yeah, that's coming up next. Now, if you're still watching, it clearly means that you're pretty serious about powerlifting. That's exactly why you don't want to make the same mistakes as I did with the next gear coming up. Here it is, the belt. The one piece of gear that almost every single lifter gets wrong. You've probably seen lifters with massive belts wrapped around their stomachs. And it's important for you to know that these belts are not there to protect your back, but they're there to give you a harder brace, which means you can lift more weight at the same time. But here's the mistake. A lot of beginners end up buying a cheap fabric or leather belt instead. So do yourself a favor and don't waste your money. They're nothing compared to the real powerlifting belts. So let's start off with the Inzer belt. This is the very first belt that I had. I don't currently have it anymore. I actually sold it so I could invest in the next belt that's coming out. But the Inzer belt was my first starting belt, and honestly, 10 out of 10 would recommend, and here's why. Not only is it IPF approved, but also it has a 10mm thickness and also the 13mm thickness choices as well. They are great for the semi-serious lifters, and if those lifters ever want to compete, they don't need to buy a new belt because the current belt that they have from Inzer is also competition approved. The only downside to this belt is that you actually have to unscrew the lever to adjust the size to your waist, whether you are losing weight or gaining weight. And of course, we have the gold standard that I was holding. This is the SBD belt, costing at a whopping $395. Yes, it's stiff, it's beautiful, and also it has an adjustable lever, so you don't have to worry about unscrewing the lever and screwing it back on. You can just unlatch it to your preference whenever, however you want. It's great for convenience when it comes to your body fluctuating, which a lot of powerlifters bulk and cut. But the question is it worth double than the Inzer belt? And in my opinion, in my humble opinion, especially if you're a beginner, I would say no. Yes, it's a buy for life item, but so is the Inzer one. They're both 13mm thick, and for the double the price, getting an adjustable lever is definitely not worth your money. So at the end of the day, it's totally up to you. If you see yourself powerlifting for the foreseeable future, then yeah, maybe consider SBD, but otherwise, almost 9 out of 10 times, I recommend getting the Inzer belt instead. And while belts are essential to bracing, your foundation matters even more. So let's finish off with my favorite part, the shoes. So unlike basketball or running, your footwear doesn't drastically change your performance when it comes to lifting heavy. What matters most when it comes to footwear when you're powerlifting is really minimal cushion and minimal stack height within the shoe. So some of the best budget options are these. You can choose to get the Chuck Taylor Converses, which is honestly such a classic. I love these shoes. Or you can get the Vans slip-ons. Either or would be great. Why? Simple. These both have minimal cushion, minimal compression, and they're both low to the ground. Oh, and I also forgot to mention, they're also IPF approved. And I've already competed in Vans twice for both my competitions, and I've had zero issues. So these cost like $60 to $80 depending on which pairs you get, but they're a great budget-friendly option, and they totally get the job done. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Now, when it comes to squatting shoes, that's a bit of a different story. Of course, you can squat in the previous budget options, but if you're more serious and you want to get into more competitions and you're having trouble hitting depth, I recommend getting the Nike Romaleos 3XD or any of the line from the Nike Romaleos. However, if you don't see any of those, you can always get the Reeboks, you can always get Anta. Any lifting shoe with a 13mm stack height will get the job done. They just help hitting depth a little bit better. And lastly, we have the deadlift slippers. Now, honestly, they're very popular. They get the job done, of course, but they're totally not worth the price. The thing is, with the money and the difference from maybe a pair of Vans to these sumo deadlifts, I feel like the price for the value is negligible. Yes, these shoes have decent grip. Yes, these shoes have like no insole and they're so low to the ground. However, I've never had problems lifting in my Vans or my Converses or bare feet. So if you want a style and you want to fit the powerlifting look, for sure, go buy the notorious slip-on shoes. They're great. But honestly, if you're a beginner, I'd almost rather see you just buying a pair of Vans instead or a pair of Converses to use. I just feel like unless you are a proficient sumo deadlift that really knows how to perfect the technique and use the shoes to your optimal performance, I don't think the sumo deadlift slippers are worth it. But You can always just buy the slippers and not even think about squat shoes or the Converses. So at the end of the day, it's totally up to you, but in my opinion, not totally worth it. And with that, you got everything you need to start stepping on that platform or get started with your powerlifting journey. Now, if you made it this far, congrats, man. Like, I can clearly tell that you take the sport so seriously. And honestly, that puts you 90% ahead of the beginners already. All right, guys, I hope this helped you get a clear understanding of what you need while also helping you narrow down your options. If you got any value out of this, do me a huge favor and drop a like and subscribe. That really helps me make more videos like this going forward. And of course, it really makes my day. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Catch you guys on the next one. Peace.